Jim, what did you think of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Well, Patrick, it is a grotesque, disgusting, disturbing movie, but it is fantastic in every way, I think. The acting is, fine. Leatherface is a terrifying killer. Everything about the Leatherface family, or whatever they're called, is just...
Yeah, that's right. They don't get a name, and none of them get names in this other than Leatherface. But in other films in this original series continuity, they're the Sawyers. In the reboot series, in the remake continuity, for whatever reason, they changed their last name. They're the Hewitts.
Okay.
And then, for some stupid reason, in Texas Chainsaw 3D, I think they're the Slaughters? Okay. I don't know why they keep changing their name, but yes.
The set design of this movie is... I don't even know how to describe it, because it's fantastic, but it's also disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't couch, which is awesome.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't give the movie enough credit for that, especially that scene when Pam wanders into the chicken room. Just how disgusting everything looks.
And then
amazing.
Even the kitchen.
And then obviously the dinner, the kitchen, yeah.
Well, the dining room is terrifying and disgusting. But even the kitchen that Leatherface drags Kirk into and Pam, there's flecks of blood on the cabinet that you can see, even before he starts cutting into Kirk. And you're like, oh, wow, he's been doing this for a long time. Everything's just gross. Grody is the word, I guess.
I don't think that is a word.
That young people use. Yeah, it is. They use it all the time. It's hip. I'm cool.
Grody?
Yeah, Grody. So grody.
Sounds like the sheriff from Jaws.
Yeah, it's just a fantastic movie, I think. How about you, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing movie. It's one of the greatest horror movies ever made. It's one of the most frightening. The first scene we see of Leatherface, that first reveal, that's one of the best scares in motion picture history, I think, when he kills Kirk. And then obviously the dinner scene is just terrifying. And it's like... I didn't talk about this, but the dinner scene, the editing in it is so amazing and disturbing. How we get those extreme close-ups of her eyes. It's just like uncomfortable. Like a camera should not be this close to a human being. The shots and the editing just enhance just how terrifying it is. So it's awesome. All that having been said, I don't enjoy this movie nearly as much as I should, given how good it is. But I respect the hell out of it. I still do enjoy it, but it's certainly not a movie that I want to rewatch all the time, and because it is genuinely disturbing and all that. But yeah, it's definitely not my favorite movie, but it's one of the greatest horror movies ever made. One thing that I think is interesting about this is that it is a horror movie that has something to say.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do a lot of this for yourself because the film doesn't spell it out. But this is a movie about a family that has been left behind by industrialization.
Yeah.
And how do they fend for themselves? Well, I guess we'll just eat people, right? These are people that lost their jobs because the gun is better than the sledge.
Yeah.
And, maybe they were crazy to begin with, but that this is like a weird kind of, it's like almost a socialist message to it, and I think that's really interesting. And that's actually one of the better aspects about the movie, going back to that scene when Franklin's talking about the slaughterhouse and you just have those shots of cows. Like, the movie's very clearly trying to say something, and I think it pulls it off pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think that might be one of the only things the movie's actually trying to say, or something interesting that we can glean from this movie.
Well, a movie only has to say one thing. I mean, you only have to have one theme.
I'm not complaining about it. I was just going to say, everybody else who's pulling all these other kinds of things out of this movie.
The Leatherface trans stuff. Which, the Leatherface trans stuff, I don't think there's a lot here in this movie. There's definitely more to say about it in the fourth one, but I also don't think the fourth one is a movie that deserves any kind of scholarly recognition of any kind, because it's terrible. But unless you want to talk about Matthew McConaughey's performance, maybe, because that's amazing. But yeah, so I mean, this movie's genuinely worthy of study.
Now, what's your opinion on people talking about the brutality displayed towards women in this movie, or the fact that I think there was a study conducted and they showed a bunch of men in this movie, and the first time they watched it, they found it disturbing, yet the second time they watched it, they found it severely less disturbing. And they're chalking that up to men being okay with severe violence towards women, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I mean, the first time I watched this movie, I was 10, and I was disturbed, but now I'm like, well, it's a movie,
Okay, well, a few things to say. One, if that is something psychologically about men, maybe we can't judge them for it, okay? Maybe it's not their fault. No, I'm kidding. maybe that's just, maybe we're all wired that way. And maybe we should just shut up about it because nobody's going to, we can't help it. But no, I don't know about that. I mean, this is an age-old debate in horror movies, slasher movies, whatever, with the women. We've talked about this, obviously, but women tend to go through hell in these movies. And yes, men die too. For the most part, men's deaths tend to be quicker, and the women tend to suffer longer and or be nude. There's no nudity in this movie, so there's, hats off to you, Tobe Hooper. But, okay, the woman gets put on a meat hook and has to watch her boyfriend get dismembered by a chainsaw. And then later on we see that she's kind of alive in a freezer full of packing peanuts. Or obviously what Sally goes through is almost worse than death in a lot of ways, just what she has to endure. But I don't know. I mean, that's what the movie is. I don't think you can say too much about like, oh, this movie is trying to do anything specifically with violence towards women that it's not doing also about violence towards men. I don't know. I guess maybe I would have to read whatever it was that you were talking about, but I don't have too much of a response to it right now.